So it's been about a year since I released this as a private members video. Y'all already know my stance. Once a members video is a year or older, I may release it for public viewing. But remember, that's only for the secular, worldly people. Any Christian or gospel videos that I do with Scandal, those will always remain member and private videos. But even with this one, it may be coming down soon. I'm just testing the waters. This is just gossip about Eddie Murphy. Y'all know my disclaimer, I do not know what's true or false. I just find gossip and tea from online, books, magazines, word of mouth, anywhere I can find it, ball it up and tell you a story, and put it in a video for you guys. Here we go. What is up, my members? We are back with another member exclusive video, and I am so excited about this one, y'all, because that man, Eddie Murphy, know that he was a sly, scandalous dog. Let's get to it. Edward Reagan Murphy was born on April 3rd, 1961 in Brooklyn, New York. His mother's name was Lillian Murphy, and his father's name was Charles Edward Murphy. And his father was a transit police officer, but many people did not know that his father also was an amateur comedian. Now, on top of Eddie, Lillian and Charles had one other son together. His name was Charles, or Charlie Murphy. Lillian also had another son with a future husband, and this child's name was Vernon Lynch. Now, early in Eddie's life, when his parents were still together, Eddie may have experienced some happy time, but I don't think this is a happiness he remembers too much because his parents split up when he was only 3 years old. And sources say that life became pretty difficult for Eddie, his mother Lillian, and his brother Charlie after that. Lillian seemed to have a very tough time raising her boys alone. Now, gossip claims that Eddie's father Charles was still in his son's life, and it's very possible that he may have helped Lillian with money sometimes, but that's basically only when he had the money and only when he was in a giving mood. Whatever Charles gave Lillian, whether it was a lot or a little bit, unfortunately all the money dried up on Labor Day weekend 1969. That was the fateful weekend where Eddie's father Charles was off with his new girlfriend, and something happened that ticked Charles off. Something happened that made him want to leave the relationship. And as he proceeded to try to walk away physically from the relationship, the new girlfriend picked up a knife and stabbed Charles to death. Eddie was only 8 years old when his father was murdered, and Charles was only 28 years old at the time of his murder. And from this point, life became especially difficult for Eddie Murphy. There was a constant emotional turmoil, not only in Eddie, but gossip claims in his mother Lillian as well. You know, her ex-husband has been killed. She's also having a very hard time providing for her sons. And then life becomes even worse because Lillian comes down with some sort of illness. It was so severe that Lillian could not continue to fulfill her motherly duties. She could not continue to care for her son. So Eddie and Charlie were actually given to the foster care system for a full year. But during that year, Lillian pulled herself together. She found a job to get some stability, and eventually she met a man who was stable himself, who was good for her, and who she thought would be a great father for her son. And so she ended up marrying him, and this guy's name was Vernon Lynch. She went and got her sons from the foster care system, and life was not great for Eddie, but it was much better than it had been before. His stepfather, Vernon Lynch, played a huge part in that. He loved Vernon Lynch. As a matter of fact, gossip claims that when Vernon Lynch died in 2001 of lung cancer, he actually died in Eddie's arms. Now, as far as Eddie Murphy's teen years, he'd already been listening to Richard Pryor comedy records, and he already felt like he could do comedy. Charlie was actually the one to start telling Eddie, well, maybe you need to cultivate that comedic part of your personality. Eddie would kind of shrug it off, like, nah, I'm still kind of learning. In the mid-1970s, though, a show came out called The Gong Show. And on this show, people would get up there with their talents, and the winner would get some kind of prize. So the show became very popular. And so all of the clubs all over everywhere started to have their own local gong show. And it was on one of these gong show nights where Charlie basically came home and prodded Eddie to go get on the stage. He told Eddie that they were giving out a $25 prize. And at first, Eddie gave him some pushback, but then he started to think, $25? That's the equivalent of $130 today in 2023. So that's pretty good money to have in your pocket. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of pocket change. So Eddie was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna give it my best shot. He gets down to the club and does a fantastic job. And no, I do not know if he won the prize money that night. But what I do know is that Eddie got bit by the bug, the showbiz bug, the acting bug. After that night, Eddie Murphy stayed on somebody's stage. I'm talking about this boy would even skip school and go and perform at local clubs and perform his comedy. And by the early 1980s, his reputation was so huge and so good on these streets that he was referenced to go try out for a show called Saturday Night Live. And when Eddie Murphy auditioned for Saturday Night Live, the stars aligned, honey. Not only for Eddie Murphy, but for Saturday Night Live, because in this time period, Saturday Night Live was struggling. Eddie auditioning blew them away, and they knew that they had found their star. When Eddie Murphy joined that cast, he blew up so big that one day Eddie got in front of the mic and introduced the show as live from the Eddie Murphy show instead of saying Saturday Night Live. That's how big he was. He owned that show. And of course, all of this promotion and people really just seeing his sheer talent allowed Eddie to first turn into a star, then turn into a superstar, and then do what? What I always say, shoot up into the stratosphere. And that is how Eddie Murphy became the star that we all know and love today. But baby, this star ain't like none of the other stars we done. See, Eddie Murphy has a thing where all of his scandals are hurriedly swept up under a rug. But your girl Ashley be digging. And I don't know if I done found all the scandals, but baby, the ones I found gonna have your scalp nickel slick looking for its penny change. Because baby, you sure enough finna be bald headed. Your wig finna be blown back to Jerusalem. Now let's get to it. Now, one of the first scandals that I saw on Eddie before I went deep diving is how this man allegedly has a stronghold on the industry. Eddie is said to have a reputation of intimidating other people in show business, which means that Eddie can make jokes and talk about everybody else, but you cannot say a word about Eddie Murphy. And when you think about this, I absolutely believe every word, because I cannot remember any time a comedian or anybody else has said anything against Eddie Murphy. Rumor has it that the last person who tried it was David Spade. So this is the mid-1990s, and David Spade has been out for a while, but at this particular time, he's starting to get bigger in his career. He's starting to get his own stand-up shows. You know, he's in the talk to do movies like Joe Dirt, but at this moment, he is still a cast member on SNL. Well, the story says that David Spade ends up having a stand-up comedy show, and in this comedy show, he tells a joke about Eddie Murphy. Something about, look, kids, you want to see a falling star? And it's Eddie Murphy walking by. And he proceeds to talk about how Eddie Murphy is not doing that well and how Eddie Murphy's movie, Vampire in Brooklyn, is a flop. Well, 2 days later, David Spade is on the set of Saturday Night Live when somebody tells him the phone has rang and Eddie Murphy is on the other end for him. David Spade has never had any contact with Eddie Murphy, never even had a conversation with Eddie Murphy. So immediately he feels like something is strange about this. He feels like something is wrong. And so he tells that person, you know, tell Eddie Murphy I'm not around. 2 hours later, somebody comes back and says, Eddie Murphy is on the phone for you again. This time, David Spade says, you know, tell him I'm out to lunch. Eddie Murphy calls 2 more times, and on that 4th time, he told whoever answered the phone that if they did not put David Spade on the phone, he would be on his way up to the SNL studio, and he was gonna see David face to face. Baby, David Spade picked up the phone and was like, hello, Eddie. Hey, man, let me tell you something. David Spade, who the fuck you think you are? Honestly, who the fuck do you think you are going after me? Do you know who I am? I am Eddie Murphy. You a dumb motherfucker, ain't you? Don't you know I'm off limits? You don't talk about me. Crazy motherfucker, you wouldn't even have a job if it wasn't for me. I mean, going off. Gossip claims that he said a whole lot more than that. David Spade could not even get a word in. And when Eddie Murphy was done, he just straight hung up on David Spade. Folks say that David Spade took his beating like a man, but baby, after that phone call, said he never said that Eddie Murphy joke ever again. And allegedly, there were several of these types of calls that Eddie Murphy made to people. Whether you were a comedian or not, or just a regular actor, you cannot mention his name, not even in an interview, really. And then, if somebody on the other end of the phone with Eddie Murphy wanted to be tough, or wanted to be like, hey man, you can't tell me what to do, I'll mention your name anytime, baby, Eddie allegedly would take it a step further. And gossip claims this is when his brother Charlie Murphy would step in, and either Charlie Murphy or Charlie Murphy's goons would go and pay that person a visit, and that person would find themselves jacked up against the wall with those goons telling them, you either shut your doggone mouth about Eddie Murphy or you gonna get what's coming to you. And this is not the last time that Eddie, Charlie, and their goons show up in a story dealing with Eddie Murphy. But in order to get to that story, we got to get into some of these deeper rumors that involve Eddie Murphy's dating life. Now, gossip claims that Eddie Murphy has only been truly in love one time in his life. I don't care about all the females you see him with, everybody that he's talked to. Gossip claims it's only been one woman that has had his heart. And allegedly, this lady's name is Lisa Figueroa. Now, the folks say that she and Eddie started dating in the early 80s. And allegedly, she is the first woman that he ever went public with, bringing her to all type of premieres, making sure there were several cameras around whenever they went out to dinner. And since Eddie was showing Lisa this type of treatment and telling her that he wanted to marry her, at first, Lisa really thought that she was the only woman in Eddie's life. But baby, that wasn't true at all. Eddie Murphy was dirty dogging Lisa. And baby, you know the folks say the main one that he was dirty dogging her with was Whitney Houston. Now, the media reports that Eddie and Whitney started talking sometime in the mid-80s, but rumors out here on the streets say that they started talking way earlier than that. As a matter of fact, some rumors say they possibly started talking or at least getting to know each other way back in 1982 when they both were doing club circuit. Whenever they met, gossip claims that Eddie was so smooth that Whitney was hooked instantly. Now, don't ask me what Robin Crawford was doing at this time, because of course there are several rumors saying that Whitney was with Robin Crawford. All I know is what I found about Whitney and Eddie. And so again, the early 80s, Eddie is dating both Whitney and Lisa. And the story says that Lisa eventually found out about Whitney Houston, but this did not make her leave. What made her leave is allegedly the same thing that messed Eddie and Whitney up, and that was Eddie's ego. Because, child, listen, the 1982 Eddie Murphy was not the 1983 Eddie Murphy. 1982 Eddie Murphy was said to be respectful, sweet, and kind, but the 1983 Eddie Murphy was an ego-driven, dirty dog maniac, and that is because Delirious came out in 1983. Rumor has it that when Delirious came out and Eddie Murphy just straight blew up, Eddie Murphy changed, started treating every woman terribly, talking to them any kind of way, and worst of all, Eddie Murphy was said to become very, very controlling. And he tended to have a habit of putting women in their place. And if you done something to make him put you in your place, he would try to do it in the worst way possible. Prime example is the rumor regarding Whitney Houston. Rumor has it that Whitney actually fell in love with Eddie Murphy. So she didn't actually do anything like go out and cheat on him. She didn't do anything to make him mad. Allegedly, Eddie Murphy felt like he had to put her in her place because he was jealous, because he did not like how big Whitney Houston was getting. It was like he wanted to be the only big time celebrity in the relationship. So anyways, Whitney don't even know she has done anything wrong. And the story says one night Eddie invited her over to his house so they could go out on a date. Whitney is fly. She is all done up, got her heels on, possibly got a fur on, gets over to Eddie Murphy's house, knocks on the door. Eddie Murphy don't come to the door. Basically, he ghosts her, makes her feel like she doesn't matter. He doesn't have time for her. Now, some versions of the story stop right there. But the messier versions of the story say that not only did Eddie Murphy not come to the door, he showed Whitney that he didn't have no time for her by letting it be known that he was in the house with several hookers and he would rather be with them than her. Gossip claims that Whitney was absolutely humiliated. She thought she meant something to Eddie Murphy. You know what I'm saying? So why would he end up doing her like that? It's like he wanted to cause some sort of psychological damage to knock her down some peg. And Whitney is not the only woman he did something like that to. Now, to move on, Eddie continued to date Lisa Figueroa until she just couldn't take it anymore, and so she left him. She broke off the relationship. And Eddie Murphy spent the rest of the 1980s being a Mandingo warrior for any woman that came his way. Gossip claims that he messed around with Beverly Johnson, Jasmine Guy. There was Vanity's sister, Patricia Matthews. And then in 1988, he met Nicole Mitchell. Said that Eddie Murphy started off top telling Nicole that she was beautiful, he was going to marry her, and promptly proceeded to break baby girl's heart. Oh baby, he took Nicole through it all. Eddie was such a wild man that Nicole had to suffer the embarrassment of having Eddie's baby the same year that one of Eddie's mistresses had one of his babies. The mistress's name was Paulette McNeely. She gave birth to Eric Murphy in 1989, and Nicole gave birth to Bria Murphy in 1989. Honey, Eddie needed to be busted all upside his head, but he didn't care. He had even more embarrassment for Nicole, because the year 1989 is also when Eddie Murphy almost lost his career because he was sued for sexual harassment. Listen, the actress that they say broke up Melba Moore's happy home, actress Michael Michelle. Child, she say she was an extra on the movie Harlem Nights, and one day while she was on set, Eddie walked up to her and told her, "I want to F you," and proceeded to feel all over her. But Michael Michelle wasn't interested, told Eddie Murphy no, and I guess Eddie Murphy told her, those were the wrong words to say, little lady. Now you ain't got a job. Eddie fired that woman because he wanted some poontang, and she didn't want to give it up. But if he thought Michael Michelle was gonna run home crying, no sir. She ran straight to the arms of a lawyer and proceeded to sue Eddie Murphy for sexual harassment to the tune of $2 million. And things really get murky right around here because allegedly Michael Michelle was an employee of Melba Moore's husband at this time. It was Melba Moore's husband's company that supplied the talent allegedly to Harlem Nights. Michael Michelle was one of those actresses, and he supplied her to be an extra on Harlem Nights. And some folks believe that Melba Moore's husband and Michael Michelle kind of planned this whole thing to set Eddie up to sue him. Don't ask me how the whole thing played out. I don't know if the woman got $2 million or any kind of settlement. What I do know though is that Eddie ain't learned one lesson. That very next year in 1990, he had another baby on Nicole, a son named Christian by Tamara or Tamara Hood. And then he showed that he hadn't learned his lesson about sleeping with actresses that were in movies with him either. Because why come the folks saying that during the filming of Boomerang, Eddie was knocking Robin Givens to the front and back? And then when Boomerang came out, was knocking Halle Berry to the left and to the right. Child, you ain't seen a dirty dog like it. I've already told you that during this whole time, he's supposed to be in a serious relationship with Nicole Mitchell. I also just told you that by the time Boomerang came out, Eddie Murphy was smashing Halle Berry. Well, Boomerang came out on July 1st. On July 18th, guess what Eddie Murphy was doing? On the phone with Whitney Houston, trying to stop her from walking down the aisle with Bobby Brown. Scandalous, honey. And I know y'all are like, what? When did Whitney Houston come back in the picture? Oh, baby, that's what we all want to know. But the folks on the streets say that Eddie Murphy wanted to see if he still had that mind control over Whitney, just to see what he could do, if he could pull her. Baby said Eddie Murphy was on that phone with Whitney Houston crying, telling her that he loved her. You know, he felt like she was making a mistake. He's now realizing that he really wants to be with her. He's promising to marry her. Nigga, what? How you gonna marry me when first of all, you're supposed to be in a serious relationship? Second of all, gossip claims you out here smashing Halle Berry. Third of all, you having babies everywhere. Toxic. The man was toxic. Anyway, when the year 1993 came around, I guess Eddie figured, you know, Nicole has been bearing with me through all of this mess. I'm finally about to marry her. But even after the marriage, folks say Eddie Murphy is still out in these streets moving like a dog. And the whispers that are going around the Hollywood street say that that hound dog would hump women and men. This was not a new rumor on the streets. Baby, from the gossip sources I was digging into, allegedly this rumor about Eddie Murphy with men had been going around since at least 1985. As a matter of fact, gossip claims that the rumor started when he was hanging around Rick James and came out with the song Party All the Time. Well, baby, by the mid-90s, these rumors were loud and clear, which made it where some people were not surprised by what happened in the year 1997. And what happened is that on May 2nd, 1997 at 4:45 in the morning, Eddie Murphy, for some reason, gets up out of bed, kisses his sleeping wife and kids goodbye, and goes to have a drive. Per Eddie, he didn't have any clear direction where he was going. He was just driving, but he ended up in the part of the city where transgender prostitutes hung out heavily. And while Eddie was driving, coasting along, he claims that he saw this pretty little Samoan girl standing on the corner of the street. Eddie Murphy rolls down the window and he says, "Hey, you need a ride home?" The girl gets in the car. Eddie pulls off. About 5 to 10 minutes up the road, they are pulled over. When the cop questions Eddie what's going on, Eddie replies, "Why, whatever do you mean, officer?" To which the officer replies, "Well, the person beside you is a prostitute. Not only is she a prostitute, she's a transgender prostitute. So again, what's going on? Why is she in the car with you?" "What? Oh my gosh, a prostitute, and then a transgender prostitute at that. Oh no, I don't know what's going on. I was just trying to give her a ride home. Story says that the police officer does not believe Eddie Murphy at all, but he pulled Eddie Murphy over before Eddie and the prostitute could do anything illegal, before they actually had sex or anything. And so he ended up letting Eddie go because he had no reason to hold him. However, the prostitute ended up being booked and taken to jail. Well, of course, it takes no time to hit the world media that Eddie Murphy has just been pulled over with a transgender prostitute. Eddie zips his lips and doesn't say anything, but baby, that doggone prostitute starts talking big time. Allegedly, the prostitute's name was Chileee, aka Addison Chileee, and she reported that not only did Eddie know she was a prostitute, he knew that she was a trans prostitute. She said when he stopped and rolled his window down, he ain't say not one word about taking her home. As a matter of fact, he yelled out, "Hey girl, can I see you in some lingerie?" Allegedly, she further stated that how could Eddie Murphy be taking her home when by the time they were stopped by the police car, they had already passed her home. Eddie's team tried to say that Chileee was lying, tried to say that Chilee's bail money had been paid by the National Enquirer, so that's why she lied. So I don't know about y'all and what y'all's opinion are, but most people have the opinion that Eddie Murphy was lying. Gossip claims that Chileee was telling anybody who would listen, and this ain't verbatim or anything like that, but basically was saying something like, what the F I got to lie for? Who got to lie? Everybody knows that Eddie Murphy been doing this. He been picking up trans prostitutes way back when. And with Chileee talking and putting her side of the story out there, every day more and more people started to convert and believe her side of the story. So it became clear real quick to Eddie Murphy that Chileee was not just going to go away. On the contrary, gossip claims that Chileee was actually starting to skyrocket to her own fame, making money telling her story. Oh baby, she absolutely became the darling of the gay community. The ultimate trans. All of the little girlies wanted to be like her, wanted to look like her. She had snagged Eddie Murphy. She was made a house madam to several gay nightclubs, was paid a ton of money to star in a porno, but along with this fame came multiple threats. And that wasn't the only bad thing happening. Rumor has it that Chileee started to notice that some of her friends started to turn against her. She could not figure out why at first. But then when she saw them telling their own story to the newspapers and magazines, basically calling her a liar, she found out Eddie was paying $15,000 a pop to each friend that would turn on Chileee. So Chileee definitely started to have things and friends and people challenge her story, but gossip claims she never changed her story. She stuck to her guns. And then when the pressure kept piling on Eddie and he had to say something, this is when he and his team spun the narrative around to say, well, yeah, Eddie was at that part of town a lot, but it was only because he was giving money out to help people. He gives them a ride home. Charity. His reputation took a huge hit. So one of the main things that his team put a stop to is they put a pause on Eddie Murphy's raunchy movie. In fact, they started him to start making way more family-friendly movies like Mulan, Dr. Dolittle, things like that. But to move along, Eddie's trans scandal happened in 1997. By 1998, Eddie had just about successfully stamped it out of the media. Well, the folks say that also in 1998, Chilee's money started drying up. And allegedly, rumors started to get back to Eddie Murphy that Chileee would just casually say, oh, well, shoot, if I get that broke, I'll just sell another story. You know what I'm saying? I'll just give more detail about the night I was with Eddie. Well, on April 22nd, 1998, at 6 o'clock that morning, Chileee was found dead, lying on the ground, partly crushed, with just a bra and some pants on and a towel around her. The official story says that Chileee, who lived on an upper floor of her apartment building, went to the roof of the apartment to smoke a cigarette. When she was done with the cigarette, she tried to go back into the building, but the roof door was locked. And that's when she has this bright idea to take the towel that's wrapped around her and try to use it to propel herself into her open apartment window. Chileee tried this, slid past her window and everybody else's window, and fell to the ground and died. Now, who believes this story? I'll wait. Let's just say if you don't believe it, you would not be the only one. Almost nobody who knew Shalimar believed the story. In fact, they felt like Shalimar was murdered, basically tossed from the roof or tossed from her open window. And guess who they feel like did the tossing? No, not Eddie, but some of those goons that Charlie Murphy and Eddie Murphy knew. Now, after this huge incident, it seems like Eddie Murphy kept his scandals slim to none regarding the public. However, in his home life, there may have been some sort of scandal going on because in 2005, his wife Nicole filed for divorce, saying that there were irreconcilable differences. Gossip claims that Nicole did not put a name on this irreconcilable difference, but could it have been Mel B? Now, sources report that Mel B and Eddie Murphy did not start a relationship until April of 2006. But these messy Hollywood streets say that there is evidence that Mel B and Eddie were messing around before that, or there's evidence at least that Eddie had his eye on Mel B. In fact, here is some photographic evidence for you. This picture of Eddie Murphy and his wife Nicole was taken back in the year 2002 for the premiere of Eddie's movie Showtime. Well, baby, right after taking this picture, allegedly, Eddie Murphy did a hop, jump, and skip over to Mel B to take a picture with her. And this right here is sure enough messy, honey, because can you imagine taking a picture with your wife and then your alleged mistress on the same night? But maybe it was just a picture at this moment. That's why I said alleged mistress. But here's the other thing that makes people believe that Mel B and Eddie Murphy were already messing around with each other. Because even if we give the month and year that they agreed to, that they admitted to messing around with each other, which was April of 2006. That is the same month that Eddie Murphy's divorce finalized with Nicole. So a lot of people take this as evidence that he and Mel B were already messing around, because it does seem like that Eddie was just waiting to sign those doggone papers with Nicole so he can hurry up and start his relationship with Mel B. But anyways, let's get into some of the messy, scandalous details of Eddie Murphy's and Mel B's relationship. So the official story says sometime in April of 2006, right after Eddie got divorced from his wife Nicole, he got on the phone with a mutual acquaintance of his and Mel B's and started telling this person, hey, look, I know you know Mel B. I really want you to introduce me to her. And so this mutual acquaintance calls Mel B and tells Mel B that Eddie Murphy wants to meet you. You know, he's having a party soon and he really wants you there. Gossip claims Mel B is shocked. You know, she had no idea that Eddie Murphy was even interested in her at all. Per Mel B, she goes to the party, and as soon as she and Eddie locks eyes, it is love at first sight. I mean, honey, there are hearts floating around her head. There are fireworks going off. She's so overwhelmed with lust, wonder, and love that she has to run off to a bathroom to cool herself down. So she gives Eddie a quick smile and she rushes off to the bathroom. When she gets in there, you know, she cools herself down by putting water on her face, and she talks to herself and she tells herself, you know, this is just too much. I'm gonna leave. I need to go home. But when she opens the bathroom door, Eddie Murphy is standing there face to face with her. He introduces himself properly, tells Mel B that he's happy she came, but Mel B is absolutely burning up in the loins, honey. You know what I'm saying? Especially now that Eddie is talking to her. So she quickly tells Eddie, you know, thank you so much for inviting me, but I have to go. I told a friend that I would meet them down at the Mondrian. Now, I don't know what the Mondrian is. Maybe that's a hotel, but Mel B tells Eddie that's where she has to go. So she leaves Eddie's house, jumps in the car, and she actually goes home. So to move along with the story, Mel B says that she's at home, she's in bed, and suddenly she gets a phone call. It is the mutual friend. And the friend is like, you know, Mel, where did you go? Where are you? Mel says something to the effect of, you know, it was just all too much. I had to come home. I was tired. And the mutual friend says, Eddie is looking for you. You need to come back. And this is when Mel B finds out just how smooth Eddie Murphy is, because she says, okay, you know, I'm putting back on my clothes, I'm coming back. And the friend says, oh wait, I forgot to tell you, the party is no longer at Eddie's house. He's moved it to this place called the Mondrian. Honey, Mel B's heart skips a beat. She is flattered out of her mind. She had told Eddie that she was going to meet a friend at the Mondrian, and this man wanted to meet her and talk to her so bad that he moved his whole party to the Mondrian so he could see her there. That's the first taste of Mel B finding out just how smooth Eddie Murphy is. So gossip claims that night Mel B does go back to the party. She and Eddie talk, and their conversation is glorious. They cannot get enough of each other, so much so that Mel B said the next day Eddie called her when he asked her, "Hey Melanie, do you mind belonging to me for the next few days and staying at my house so I can really get to know you?" Mel B can't say anything outside of yes. Over the next few days, her and Eddie listen to music. They discuss all of their thoughts and fears. They're holding hands, giggling, watching movies. Well, soon after this, Eddie Murphy and Mel B are joined at the hip. And over the next 1 to 2 months, Mel B is spellbound. She and Eddie make the most passionate love that anyone has ever experienced. On top of that, Eddie Murphy hands her his credit card. Then he makes sure she gets to ride in the finest chauffeured vehicle. Diamonds, roses, wines, and fancy meals are all Mel C. Now, one thing Mel B does notice is that Eddie Murphy's family is almost always around. Like, a lot of them either lived at the house with him or they visited a lot. But Mel didn't mind this. Eddie ensured that everybody made her feel welcome, made her feel happy, like she was part of the family. So like I stated before, finery and happy times with Eddie were all Mel saw. And this was cool until Mel B realized that this was truly all she saw. Gossip claims that around the 2nd or 3rd month of their relationship, the cracks started to show. For one, allegedly, Eddie Murphy had slowly but surely became a very controlling man. Like when I said the finest things and happy times with Eddie was all Mel B saw, I literally meant that. Allegedly, Eddie was so controlling that many times he didn't allow Mel B to leave the house. Baby said if she wanted to go shopping, Eddie Murphy would have the clothes delivered to their home and she could pick out the clothes there. If she wanted to go jog, allegedly Eddie Murphy would tell her, "This is stay big enough, you can jog around the house." If Mel B even wanted to go get coffee in the morning, Eddie Murphy would tell her that his chef can make the best coffee in the world. She could have coffee there. And here's the thing, if Mel B could rarely leave the house, Mel B and Eddie Murphy together, oh baby, you can forget about it. They could never leave the house. Eddie would not allow it. So gossip claims that Mel B tried to deal with this the best she could, but soon it started to be a little bit much, you know what I'm saying? And so Mel B started to feel like, I don't have to stay in the house all the time. You can stay, but I'm gonna start going out with my friends. I'm about to start doing stuff. But baby, why come one time Mel B came home from hanging out with her friends and Eddie Murphy gave her a full rundown of what she did that day? Baby said Eddie Murphy was standing there talking, scaring the hell out of Mel B because it was clear to her that he had somebody following her, watching her every move. But gossip claims that simultaneously, while these weird things that she wasn't sure about were going on, there were other things that were going on that were very sweet to Mel B. And baby, the folks say that if Eddie Murphy ever wears some short running shorts, you'll see exactly one of the sweet things Mel B is talking about. Because child, why come the folks say that Eddie Murphy tattooed Mel B's name on his upper thigh? And honey, not only that, made sure enough sure that Mel B got his name tattooed on her upper thigh. So unless they got these things covered, Mel B and Eddie Murphy are just walking around with each other's names on each other's thighs. So anyways, that showed some of his sweet behavior to Mel B. And then the sweetest thing of all is when he had her father flown from the UK to America and booked in a hotel room. And allegedly, Eddie went up to the hotel to see Mel B's father to ask for Mel B's hand in marriage. The story says that Mel B's father said yes, gave Eddie his blessing, and Mel B could not believe it. She was engaged to be married to the man that she felt like now was the absolute love of her life. So what destroyed this dream? How the heck did Mel B and Eddie Murphy go from being super duper in love to having some of the most scandalous baby mama, baby daddy drama that the world had ever seen? Well, gossip claims it all came down to 1 week in July 2006. In that week, Mel B and Eddie Murphy went out of the country on vacation. And while they were on vacation, they continued their thrilling lovemaking. And I suppose Mel B got some sort of sense that she was pregnant, or some rumors even claimed that they planned to get pregnant. All I know is that one day while they were gone, Mel B whipped out a pregnancy test. She took it and it revealed that she was pregnant. The tears just started flooding down her face. The flurry almost blinded her as she was running, smiling from ear to ear, looking for her lover, looking for Eddie. According to Mel B, Eddie Murphy matched this energy with the fact that he started crying as well. And if you're wondering why I am describing this so dramatically, it was dramatic. Mel B even said that Eddie started to jump for joy. So she and Eddie have this baby on the way. They are ecstatic. But when they get back to the United States, there has been a change, honey. First off, Eddie Murphy is alleged to be acting more possessive of her than he has ever acted in his life. According to Mel B, Eddie acts like he wants to totally possess her. Another change was alleged to be Eddie's family. Before, they're treating her so nicely, you know what I'm saying? Treating her like she is part of the family. Baby, now they are giving her the side eye with the stank face included, honey. Mel claims whenever she walks in the room with Eddie's family, they either stop talking real fast or they got a little something slick to say. And whatever slick stuff they were saying made it clear to Mel B that they thought of her as a gold digger. Oh, it was all good when she was just dating Eddie, but suddenly they're so-called engaged and now she's pregnant, about to have his baby, and they haven't even been talking for a year? Baby, the folks say that Eddie Murphy's family was not playing that one bit. And for you members, gossip claims that it was actually Eddie Murphy's mama who was really vocal about how she felt Mel B and Eddie Murphy were moving too fast. Allegedly, as Eddie's family were becoming more and more comfortable with being vocal about their disdain for Mel B, she became more and more uncomfortable. And so she starts coming up with suggestions. You know, she's begging Eddie, please, let's start getting out of the house more. Eddie says no. So then Mel B says, okay, if you want to spend all your time indoors in the house, let's go purchase a house together. Therefore, my name can be on it too, you know, and we can also get away from your family sometimes. Get away from everybody, just me and you in our new house. Eddie also says no to that. So finally, after about 7 months being with Eddie Murphy, Mel B starts to crack under the pressure. And she walks up to Eddie and she tells him, you know, this is all getting to be a bit too much. I need a break, Eddie. And he is like, a break? What you need a break from? What you mean? Mel tells him, I just need to get away for a while. I need to leave. I need to think things over. Eddie starts to complain again. Mel B ignores him. She goes and she jumps on a plane and she flies back to the UK. Mel says the first day that she was gone, Eddie is blowing her phone up. She turns the phone off. This didn't deter Eddie Murphy at all. He starts calling Mel B's mama, also calls all of her friends. Mel B ignores it. Well, on that second day, Mel B gets time to herself and she finally can breathe and she thinks things over. And in the end, she finds out that she loves Eddie. You know what I'm saying? She can deal with his family. She can deal with all of the weird things because she loves him, and that's who she wants to be with. On the third day, Mel B hops on a plane to America, honey. She is coming to America, just like the movie. You know, she is coming to get her man. And as she was sitting on that plane, huffed up with pride, ready to see her man, baby, she did not know that everybody that was on the ground already was looking at her like she was boo-boo the fool. Because at the same time Mel B was on that plane coming to get her man back, Eddie Murphy was walking down the red carpet with a mic in his face, telling the whole world that he and Mel B wasn't together. And not only were they not together, that child that she's pregnant with, oh, he don't know who baby that is. You know what I'm saying? He ain't sure if that's his child or not. Humiliation tactic. The same way that he humiliated Whitney Houston that day when he had her show up at the house and he wouldn't come to the door, those were the same tactics he was doing on Mel B right at this moment. Child, when Mel B landed off that plane, her phone got to ringing with all kind of folks trying to tell her what Eddie Murphy just said. And not only that, the media had got word of what plane Mel B was on, and when she stepped in that airport, they were waiting with cameras rolling to ask her about what Eddie Murphy just said. What did Eddie Murphy mean that you're not carrying his baby? Well, I thought it was common knowledge that you and Eddie Murphy were together. Are you guys not together anymore? What's going on, Mel B? Baby, it's a scandalous thing, child. Mel B was shocked, she was humiliated, and she was furious. us, baby. She tried calling Eddie Murphy right off the bat. She didn't get an answer. And it was only when she was in the car did Eddie Murphy finally call her back. And Mel B went off. She asked him, "What is wrong with you? I needed a break and suddenly you're not my child's father?" Baby said that Eddie said, "Well, I didn't know what to say. You know what I'm saying? You said you needed a break. You left me. I didn't know what was going on." Just as smooth as ever, baby. No emotion, no passion. Gossip claims he almost acted like he and Mel didn't have any history. Allegedly, Eddie Murphy had totally detached from the whole thing. Detached from Mel B, detached from the baby. Story says that Mel B couldn't even really believe what was going on. So she told Eddie, "I'm gonna make you effing take a DNA test since you want to play me." Eddie responded again, very cold, like, "Well, you left me." I am pretty sure that Mel B went through the emotional ringer. And rumor has it, over the next few months of her pregnancy, Mel B did try several times to call Eddie to apologize to him, to tell him, "Let's make this work." She could not get in contact with him. Even when Mel B delivered their baby girl on Eddie Murphy's birthday, gossip claims that Eddie Murphy still didn't say a word. And his absence was felt terribly. Mel B ended up having to be by herself and deal with this huge media fallout. Even if Mel B really didn't want to get her child tested for DNA, she absolutely had to, because allegedly Eddie Murphy wasn't about to provide any support for that child without a DNA test. And so the courts had to get involved. The DNA test was done, and of course Eddie was the father, and it was just a big mess, a huge embarrassing mess. Unfortunately, Mel B ended up getting judged very harshly by the public, because a lot of the public felt like Eddie's family members felt. They felt like, "Mel B, aha, that's what you get because you was trying to trap Eddie. You was trying to get all that money." It got even tougher, because even after Eddie found out that the child was his, Eddie still wouldn't have anything to do with that child. Some rumors out here say that child got treated like a bald-headed stepchild all the way up until about 6 years of age. But I do know that thankfully he has a relationship with the child today. But as far as he and Mel B's relationship, friendship, or whatever they had going on, I'm not sure if that was ever really resolved. Let's move on to the next scandalous story. Baby, they say in this relationship, Eddie Murphy met his freaking match. And this lady's name was Tracy Edmonds, Babyface Edmonds' ex-wife. The old Hollywood streets say that Eddie Murphy was not ready for Tracy's alleged conniving, gold-digging, and stank attitude way. She and Eddie got together sometime in 2007. And really, it probably wasn't even 3 or 4 months since Eddie had been with Mel B. And rumor has it that Tracy sweeps Eddie off of his feet. She knew the art of seduction, and Eddie didn't know what to do with that. When he would tell her that she could never leave the house, Tracy was cool with that. She didn't have to go out for coffee. She didn't want to go out for shopping. Whatever Eddie Murphy asked or wanted her to do, gossip claims Tracy did it. And so Eddie was locked in with Tracy very early on. And over the course of 12 or 13 months, Eddie fell deeply and completely in love with Tracy Edmonds. And so he asked her to marry him. And it seemed like Tracy had it in the bag. But Tracy got sloppy. She started to get too comfortable, and she started to make mistakes. First mistake she made is she started to talk too much. Folks say that sometimes Tracy would do interviews and she would answer questions regarding Eddie. And Eddie did not like that. He wanted her to say, "I'm not going to discuss that. I'm not going to discuss him or our relationship." So that was strike one, talking too much. And then you have strike two. And this one involved Eddie Murphy's mom. Rumor has it that Eddie Murphy's mom, Lillian, hated Tracy. Same way that she hated Mel B. Gossip claims that she hated Tracy even more than Mel B, because she saw that Tracy knew how to work that magic. And because Tracy was like this, a lot of times she would have Eddie's ear over his mama. And baby, Mama Lillian did not play that. Oh honey, Eddie Murphy is a notorious mama's boy. There are all type of rumors about how he doesn't even make a move without his mother say so. Well, again, Tracy is kind of shifting that power. Well, the actual strike two that I'm talking about is that Tracy allegedly recognizes this power shift. So according to the gossip, Tracy gets way too comfortable, baby, and one day snaps at Eddie's mother. And when Eddie heard this, Tracy snapping at his mama, This started to shift that power dynamic back into his mother's favor. But Eddie didn't end the relationship right off. He continued dating Tracy, still engaged to her, but he told her, instead of us getting married in the U.S., let's go to Bora Bora. And then when we get back from Bora Bora, that's when we'll file the legal papers of our marriage in the U.S. Well, when Eddie, Tracy, and both of their families got together and went to Bora Bora, allegedly this is when the third and final strike happened. Allegedly, the day or night before the wedding, both sides of their family were outside eating. You know, they're at this long table, everybody's sitting down eating on the sand. Well, somebody in Eddie's family, most rumors say it was his mother, whoever it was, they heard somebody in Tracy's family say something to the effect of, ooh, Tracy did this, baby. And then, come here, look at this family over there. Child, they been living good. Well, now Tracy finna make it to where they have to wipe their own ass. She finna be Eddie's wife now. She ain't finna just be letting his family live off their money. Baby, gossip claims as soon as this was said, all hell broke loose, because even if it was not Eddie Murphy's mother who initially heard it, it got back to her. And she stumped right up to Eddie and told him exactly what was said. And baby, gossip claims Eddie was ticked off. Said he grabbed Tracy to the side and told her what his mother had heard. And Tracy immediately went into damage control. Baby, she started apologizing profusely for her family. She even found the so-called family member that said this and made that family member apologize to Eddie, his mother, the whole family. Gossip claims that the apologies did not work. She could not quell Eddie's temper. And so when she was losing control, she started to panic and she also got a temper. And this caused her to make the biggest slip of all. Child said that Tracy was apologizing, trying to get Eddie back happy and all this kind of stuff. And once he stayed mad, she went off with some of her family members, maybe some girl cousins or something like that. She started saying something to the effect of, Eddie would be over this by now, or he probably wouldn't even have gotten mad if it wasn't for his bitch mama. Baby, the folks say that Eddie found out about that too. And if you're trying to figure out how Eddie Murphy found out, I cannot tell you exactly how, but if you remember, Mel B said that he would send people to follow her everywhere, and she had no idea. So he could have very easily had somebody following Tracy everywhere she went, and maybe that person listened in to Tracy and her cousins and reported it back to Eddie. And then another rumor says that even on top of Eddie finding out that Tracy called his mama a B, he also found out that Tracy had actually sold some of the rights to the wedding, like videos, photos, stuff like that. Allegedly, she had already sold those rights to a magazine. And all of this stuff combined caused Eddie Murphy to show his natural black behind, honey. The next day when the wedding came, Eddie walked down the aisle with Tracy and he seemed like a very happy bridegroom. They had the reception, they danced the night away. Tracy was all smiles when she and Eddie went back to their room. And then in the days after that, they end up flying back to the U.S. As far as Tracy knows, when they got back to the U.S., Eddie has taken their marriage license documents and he has filed them. Baby, Eddie had that humiliation waiting on Tracy's tail. He waited for the magazines that allegedly Tracy sold the wedding photo rights to. He waited for those magazines to publish those photos. And as soon as he saw himself and Tracy on the cover, baby, he told his publicist to release a statement basically saying he and Tracy Edmonds were not married. They had never been married. And yes, they did have a ceremony in Bora Bora, but that ceremony was not legal. And then to smash it down on Tracy even more, he put at the end of the statement that now he and Tracy have decided to just be friends. Baby, talk about a sting and a burn. Tracy Edmonds was mortified to find out through a statement that she is not only not really married to Eddie Murphy, he's also breaking up with her. She felt like the entire world was laughing at her. And to be honest, there were a lot of people that were laughing at her. So they said immediately, Tracy started to call all of these magazines like People, Us Weekly. She told them that Eddie was controlling, he was halfway abusive, and that she couldn't deal with it anymore. So that's why the marriage was over. Tracy was too little, too late. Eddie's statement had come out first and wasn't nobody buying what Tracy was having to say. You know, they probably believed that Eddie was controlling, but they did not believe for 1 second that Tracy was the one that ended up calling the marriage off. Now we are going to get into some of the last rumors of the video. And the first rumor says that Eddie Murphy can date and marry any woman that he wants. Child, the folks say that the last lover standing will always be Johnny Gill. Listen, honey, these folks on these old Hollywood streets are messy, baby. Even now, people out here on these streets accuse Eddie's current wife, Paige. They're basically out here saying that Paige shares Eddie Murphy with Johnny Gill. Now, if there's any truth to these rumors that say that Eddie and Johnny Gill have been messing around for all of these years and now there's basically an arrangement, I wonder if Johnny Gill and Paige get jealous when Eddie cheats on both of them, because gossip claims that Eddie definitely does. In the year 2014, he was blasted by another transgender prostitute named Honey Dip. And Honey Dip came out telling the world on Twitter that she had been having sexual relations with Eddie Murphy since she was 17 years old. She didn't like how Eddie Murphy was denying her and acting like she was lying, and so now she was trying to sue him for $1.2 million. And baby, I'm talking about Honey Dip leaked all kind of messy information and details. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put some tweets on the screen. Pause it if you want to read. My baby did not tell you it was messy. And child, there's even more than that. And they get nastier than that as well. If you go click on the link in my top comment, you can go to that page and read all the tweets. And not only was Eddie allegedly cheating with Honey Dip, another infamous transgender, Tony Newman, said this about Eddie Murphy.
But Eddie Murphy frequented 14th Street. When he did come,
I've heard about Eddie
all the flavor was jumping. The girls wanted to get in. I never was asked. I never got in the car, but I can name at least 10 who got into his car. When he picked them up, and he was looking for well-endowed, preferably huge.
Wow. So you think he's about him too, right?
Well, I don't know why you would look for a big dick. Unless you wanted to service it.
All right, Eddie, you're fierce, baby. All righty then. I didn't know.
I've never had Eddie, but I've heard more than 50 stories.
So what do y'all think, honey? Are these people lying on Eddie Murphy, or are they telling the truth? Do Eddie like him hung, or do he like his booty loose? All right, y'all, I'm sorry. This is a members video. Y'all knew it was going to get ratchet and nasty. That's what we do. I am done with this member exclusive old Hollywood scandalous video. Put your thoughts in the comments. I need to know what you guys think. Also, like this video. Even though it's a members video, I still need you guys to like this video. I love you guys so much. Y'all are my squad. Thank you for the support. I keep trying to tell y'all, you don't know how much it means to me. Anyways, y'all, I love y'all. Bye.